Has your future been determined yet? This is obviously a question that can be answered in many different ways. A question that can lead us to hours of wondering, what does determined even mean? If so, then who determined it? Are we able to determine it ourselves? Can we choose anything at all? Does free will even exist? What would it all mean if it didn't? You see, the future always seems like such an unpredictable mess, and so we humans love to overthink it at times. But I have to say, there is beauty in seeking answers to all of those questions. Questions that Steins Gate tackles and explores like no other anime. Because Steins Gate isn't just an anime that is fun to watch and exhilarating to dissect, but also an anime that can teach you a great deal about the future and how you can influence it.
001, lab founder, evil genius, and mad scientist extraordinaire. 'Tis I, Hououin Kyouma.
I still think that Ocarine sounds way cuter.
Silence!
Steins Gate is an anime set in current-day Japan. Our main protagonist, Okabe Rintarou, is a self-proclaimed mad scientist that goes by the alias Hououin Kyouma, a mad teenage scientist with high goals that runs the Future Gadget Laboratory. And together with the remaining lab members, they have been attempting to unravel the mysteries of time, to become masters over time itself. And in pursuit of this goal, one day Okabe visits a time travel conference where he encounters Makise Kurisu, an internationally revered neuroscience researcher. They get into a small argument at first, but then decide to leave it there and go their separate ways. Our main protagonist didn't think much of it. Well, that is until a few minutes later where he finds Makise's body dead on the floor. He can't believe what he's just witnessed. Someone just killed her. And to think that they had just spoken to each other a few minutes prior. He then runs outside, and once he clears his head, he sends a message to his best friend and lab member Daru telling him what just happened, letting him know of the atrocity that had just taken place. But in the moment he sends that message, a strange feeling flows over him, something he had never felt before. And then suddenly, he found himself on an empty street. Things were different now. Somehow, he was able to shatter through one timeline and ended up in a completely different one where Kurisu is still alive. After getting over the fact of what just happened, Okabe offers Makise to join the lab if she really wants to know more about the experiments that they are conducting. She accepts the offer and then finds out that they've been messing around with time travel. As a matter of fact, just now, Okabe and Daru found a way to send a banana back in time. Their first ever success with time travel. Or at least that's what they thought, because they soon come to realize that the text Okabe sent about Makise's death had been sent back in time as well. And so, they realized that they found a way to alter the future through text messages that were then called emails. Messages capable of changing an outcome in the future by initiating a new timeline for Okabe to explore. Everything seemed to be going great at first. They had finally found a way to mess with time. They made many new friends and added many new lab members to support their efforts. They were even able to help those friends with the experiments they conducted. And to top it all off, Okabe's reading Steiner ability allowed him to remember every event from the past timeline, making sure that nothing could ever stop him in his endeavors. But then, Okabe's best friend and companion Mayuri Shiina gets killed by the organization. He loses it completely. There is no way he will allow this to happen. He sends D-mail after D-mail into the past to prevent Mayuri's death from happening. But every single time, time gets its way. No matter how hard Okabe tries, Mayuri dies again and again and again and again. To the point even where he completely loses his mind trying to save her from certain death. After watching Mayuri die dozens of times, over and over again, Okabe is ready to give up. His soul has been brought to its breaking point, but thankfully, he has someone who is able to save him from the depths of depression, Makise Kurisu. Together, they find a way to prevent Mayuri's death from happening. They found out that no matter what Okabe tries to do from now on, will always lead to Mayuri's death, as if destined to happen by divine punishment. And so, The only way to prevent her death is to undo every D-mail they ever sent. Therefore, Okabe goes on and reverts every single D-mail until he arrives at the very first one he ever sent. That one D-mail that prevented Kurisu's death. Now, Okabe has to choose. Makise or Mayuri. Who gets to live and who gets to die? But he refuses. He looks fate right into the eye and says enough. He will not be beaten down by the belief that some things have been decided already, and so he chooses to continue on, to never give up and work relentlessly to find a way to reach Steins Gate. A way to live in a world line where Makise and Mayuri both survive. He won't back down, because even if it drives him mad, he will find a way.
This was bound to happen. It was stupid of me to play alone. I'm sorry, but I'm just done. Let time have its way.
Determinism, predeterminism, and free will. These are just some of the overarching themes that Steins Gate tackles. Themes that may be foreign to many of you watching, but also themes that are incredibly important to understand when trying to decide what one's meaning of life is. Determinism and predeterminism are two theories that claim that everything in life has been determined to happen already. While determinism focuses on the fact that everything that happens had an initial cause that led to the final event, what scientists would even call the cause and effect principle, predeterminism is a different theory that states that every cause was set in place and chosen by God, the universe, or some other form of divine being. And although they sound fairly similar, predeterminism goes a step further in stating that every event, from past, present to future, has already been decided by God, fate, or the universe. In other words, no matter what you do, you'll always end up fulfilling the prophecy priorly said by that divine being. And although both of these theories are interesting philosophies to consider, they are not philosophies that I suggest implementing into one's life. And why not? Well, because the moment we start accepting these philosophies as truthful and real is the moment when many of us start losing our minds and completely disregard the concept of personal responsibility. A truth that is best portrayed by Okabe in Steins Gate and especially Steins Gate 0. Once the beloved and mad Hououin Kyouma, and now, after falling into the trap of predeterminism, he lost most of what made him who he once was. The moment he lost faith in free will was the moment he lost himself. Now, I don't want to deny the existence of determinism. I do believe that everything in life that happens had an initial cause that led to it. But where I differ from hard determinists is that I don't simply believe that one cause led to one effect. Life isn't that simple. I mean, it's true that you only ate what you ate for breakfast this morning because you once bought it in a store. Or maybe you didn't even eat at all this morning because you were fasting and trying out to see its potential benefits. And you only did that because of a podcast you watched the day prior. So yes, everything we do had an initial cause. But all of this could only have been determined by you. It all happened because of how you chose to act upon encountering that stimulant. Because although everything in life has an initial source, yes, even our feelings, that doesn't mean that the cause will inevitably lead to one certain outcome. You see, whenever a causation event occurs, there are infinite possible effects that could result from it, and which one of those become reality is then chosen by your free will. Just because you watch that podcast doesn't mean that you will decide on fasting. You could have just as easily have encountered that stimulant and then still decided not to fast. But also, of course, the choice of not fasting is in itself also rooted in another cause that led to that decision. But then that cause had to be chosen in the first place by you as well. And so, we can keep on playing this game until we're back at the age-old question of what came first. The decision or the cause? The chicken or the egg?
I don't even know if it's possible. Can we alter the future without time travel? Or is that a Sisyphean task?
Look, obviously I don't intend on having all the answers here, but I hope to help you better deal with the hard questions you may ask yourself if you ever hear someone tell you that free will doesn't exist. And how I would deal with that situation is very simple. Because, regardless of whether free will actually exists or not, it is always better to believe that it exists than to believe that it doesn't. Why? Well, quite simple really. If free will exists and you believe in it, then you'll be making the best decisions for your life and your life will turn out to be whatever you make of it. And if free will doesn't exist and you believe or don't believe in it, in both cases, regardless of your beliefs, things will just turn out as they should have to begin with, so it really doesn't matter. You can't affect any of it. But even in this case, you could claim that believing in free will lead you to living a happier and more fulfilled life because you'll feel in control of it. But now, if free will exists and you don't believe in it, this is where we face a serious problem. It is here that you will start blaming everything on fate or God and will never take on responsibility for your own actions. It is then that you'll start losing control of your life because you'll believe that you can't change any of it anyway. And so, your lack of decision making will lead to a meaningless life, and you'll start falling into the abyss of defeatism. As you can see, regardless of whether free will exists or not, choosing to believe in it is logically speaking the safest choice to make. Which is also why I truly believe that your future is in your hands, and whoever tries to sell you otherwise is simply trying to control you for the sake of power. Sure, everything in life had its initial cause, but then that cause initiated a myriad of possible outcomes from which you chose out of your own free will which one you'd like to live with. As Gandhi once said, "The future depends on what you do today."
Since when have you been the type of person who's just done? You're not fooling me. You've never given up on anything ever. You never got mad and you never quit. So no, I'm not letting you throw in the towel.
Life can suck, and it probably will for most of the time, but it all depends on how you choose to react to it. Using your own free will, you can determine to see it as a challenge and to level up your mind, body and soul through it. Or of course, you can let yourself be overcome by all of it and just give in to despair. After all, giving up is always the easier choice to make, but it will also always lead you towards a harder life to live. Okabe had to learn this lesson the hard way, that life will do whatever it can to beat him down. Because, well, life doesn't have any favorites. Life simply is. And so, how you decide to live your life and how you decide to shape your future depends on how you choose to act in the now. Steins Gate makes a beautiful job in presenting this message. They could have just shown the hardships of life and how Okabe would have had to face off against them until he finally reached his desired goal. But they even went a step further in showing us what would happen to Okabe if he had decided to give up. Basically the essence of the plot of Steins Gate Zero, an anime that was incredibly hard to sit through. It broke my heart to see what had become of our beloved Hououin Kyouma. Once a fearless and enthusiastic mad scientist, and now nothing more but a depressed soul. A man who had given up on life since he had given up on free will. And this is exactly what Steins Gate tries to tell us on a philosophical level. Never give up. Never back down and betray the choices you made in the past. No matter what others may claim, you are the reason that you ended up where you did. And therefore, it is your choices that will define what happens next. Just like the flutter of a butterfly's wing can cause a typhoon halfway around the world, so can small choices that you make today propel your life to new heights or new lows. So be aware of your actions. Think about where they will take you in the future and then adjust them where necessary, because in the end, there will be no one else to blame but you. So take responsibility into your own hands and make sure that you never lose the little Hououin Kyouma that lives within you. That you can decide your own future by your own actions. That you can always stay a mad scientist. The future is not up to the will of fate. It's your actions that will lead you to Steins Gate. 𝐓𝐡𝐞. Thanks for watching, guys. Feel free to subscribe and check out one of my previous videos right here. This channel is all about looking at video games and pop culture from a different perspective, about digging deeper into the meaning of life and how we can get there with video games, movies and TV shows. So if that interests you, maybe subscribe, maybe hit the bell to be notified. What about that, huh? Yeah? Okay, good. See ya!
Feel the burn. You call yourself a monster?